from executive session. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting with a roll call of the school committee. Michelle Kirkby here.
Diana Frischella here.
Leo Brem here.
Will Horn here.
Sophia Viglas here.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open public input. Members of the public are welcome to comment during the public input, either here or through Zoom. If you're on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. We ask that you keep your camera on when making a Zoom comment, and that you follow school committee policy for public input, including speaking for no more than 3 minutes, and only on topics under the purview of the school committee. And whether you're here in person or on Zoom, please state your name and address for the record. And it's been very interesting to get feedback lately that I thought might be helpful to share with you all. And just as a reminder, you all know that the school committee evaluates the performance of the superintendent and is responsible for district communications, among many other responsibilities. Some of the feedback that I've received recently is that people feel, people who do not have children in the schools have felt excluded by the superintendent advisory councils being closed to them. That in the past, that had been the practice, that it was open to the entire community, and now it's not. It's been closed to anyone who does not have children in the schools. And I know that past meetings have had covered such topics as really important topics, including the budget. We all know that the school budget is a community issue. It's not just a parent issue. It affects all residents and taxpayers. All residents have a right to get additional information on the budget, to have another opportunity to ask questions about the budget, especially of the superintendent. Even if you have one school committee member there, in the past you had one person there as a school committee member who did not have a child in the public schools. And you cannot arbitrarily just exclude somebody just because they're not they do not have a child in the school, and the school committee member acting solo should not get special treatment. And also the public meetings. We've had public meetings that have been previously held at the Blake Library, which is where the meetings are held. There's been some case law around that regarding that being a public forum if you've had public meetings there in the past. So I would be careful about that practice as well. I mean, overall, the school budgets, like I said, they affect every taxpayer, not just parents. I think we're in a situation now where we're going to be looking for support at town meeting for school budgets, and you're going to want to get that support, and then down the road, you're going to want to get it for the building project. And so it's going to be very important to open up all these venues for community engagement and not just shut them down. Because people will see and people will feel frustrated that they have not had access to be able to get their questions answered in a more informational form. So that's, I've mentioned this again, nothing's changed, so I just wanted to make sure to bring it up again. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Any other public comment here or online?
Dick Judge, 8 Juniper. Glad to see the representatives here. I'm delighted that you're here to support all of this, which is Medfield. Had a couple comments. I'm surprised. Sorry, I didn't know you were coming, but my comments will go off just the same as was. I'll piggyback a little bit of what the previous speaker said. Community engagement is key, especially when trying to sell a new school building or a new school budget. Involvement is necessary, and to see monies being spent and people not knowing where things are going and what's going on, especially if the representatives are working hard to get the town of Medfield money, it's necessary that the town be engaged, fully engaged. To that point, I'm going to continue to bring up, because it will come to pass one day when the third grade tours are put back into service. As the representatives know, because they were part of the third grade tour benefits, the third grade tours were specifically designed to teach the young children, third graders, about history. Medfield has one of the strongest histories in the United States. It was founded on volunteers, right? And volunteers are what made the initial armies take flight against the king. Volunteers were part of building the town. Volunteers are where it's at. And so when we see volunteers being selectively cut from service, for instance, third grade tours, a volunteer-run program where the kids were introduced to all the historic buildings in Medfield. May not seem really important, but guess what? It's the third grade tours that got us a new roof on the grist mill. It's the third grade tours that remind kids where they're from. So when they go out to California and they're having a great time and somebody says, wow, yeah, we're really, really old. California's really old. They have no idea how old can be. And so I'm here to promote, again, the resurgence and reemergence of the third grade tours. The school committee voted not to have them any longer, and I don't know if it was 100% of the school committee voted not to have them. Ms. Fiscal.
I was going to say, I don't think we were all here during that vote. I wasn't part of school.
The school committee didn't vote on this.
Because you certainly had something to say through your husband to people who were saying.
Okay.
When you take
Mr.
creepy
Judge,
photos and keep them yourself of my son, I do wonder what you do with underage photos.
So-
Judge,
Point of order.
Mr. Judge.
Point of order.
Yeah. I'll carry on by just saying I'm looking forward to the reemergence of third grade tours.
Not funny.
And I'm looking forward to ethics coming back to the school committee and threats not being made to the general public. And I appreciate,
That is so inappropriate.
according to you, but not to me. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the fact that
Yeah, your
3 minutes are up.
Mr. Judge, thank you, though.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Successfully embarrassed yourself. Okay.
Anyone else online or here? All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. For the consent agenda this evening, we have the approval of February 5th, 2026 regular meeting minutes and no donations this evening. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything on the minutes?
No.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. Moving on to new business and our state delegation. I want to say we're very glad to welcome members of our state legislation here tonight, Senator Becca Rausch, Representative Marcus Vaughn, and Representative Josh Tarski. Thank you for being here and taking the time to connect with the school committee about the issues affecting our schools and community. Before we start, we can introduce ourselves. I'm Michelle Kirkby, Chair of the school committee.
Jeff Marsden, Superintendent.
Leo Rem.
Will Horn.
Sophia Biglis. And a representative of the school committee.
Do you guys want to go too?
But
Thank you, School Committee. I am Marcus Vaughn, State Representative 9th Norfolk, representing Rentham, Plainville, Norfolk, Medfield 3 and 4, Millis 1, and Walpole 5.
I'm Senator Becca Rausch, serve as Chair of the Joint Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources and Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government and Senate Vice Chair of the Senate Committee on the Census, and I sit on 5 additional committees beyond that. I represent the Norfolk, Worcester, and Middlesex District, comprised of Medfield and 10 other towns that I won't list for the sake of time.
Hi, everybody. I'm State Representative Josh Tarski. I represent Needham, Dover, and I split Medfield with Representative Vaughn. So, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you guys so much for being here. So to make the conversation as productive and focused as possible, I shared some topics prior to this, and I'll kind of go through them. And then from a committee standpoint, if you guys have questions or things you want to chat about, you can kind of just interweave that in to make it kind of as conversational as possible between us. I'm actually going to start with a topic that I didn't share in the original email.
Gotcha.
So, over the past few years, the school committee has spent a lot of time discussing mobile devices and the impact of technology on students. As a result, we've established a mobile tech task force that continues to explore the issue and look at possible approaches for the district. We know the state has also been looking closely at student cell phone use in schools. Would you be able to share an update on the work happening at the state level around creating cell phone-free school environments?
Sure, I'll kick that one off. The Senate passed a cell phone-free school environment bill, the date of which I don't have because I didn't ask my staff to get it in advance of this meeting because we didn't know we were going to be talking about it, but we did pass it, and I remember taking the vote. Actually, there was a lot of really good debate about it, and I in particular wanted to make sure that the policy that we were going to pass at the Senate level would be realistic and implementable for all of the schools. We have a huge variety of schools, right? I represent. Okay, now I'm going to list them. Needham, Dover, Sherburne, Medfield, Millis, Norfolk, Rentham, Plainville, Franklin, Bellingham, and Milford into Worcester County. It is a huge variety of communities, a huge variety of student populations, and a huge variety of different kinds of schools. So if we're going to pass a bill at the state level, it has to work for every single one of those schools. So when the legislation came out, I'm not on the education, I'm on 8 committees, but education committee this year is not one of them. And so, I first really saw that legislation when it was just about to come to the floor, and I quickly got in touch with superintendents and principals and other people throughout the district to say, tell me what you think of this. And we were able to secure through amendments and other processes some shifts in the language to make sure that policy would be implementable across the board. So the Senate passed that bill, and the last I checked, it is still with the House.
We have not taken it up in the House, but being a member of the Black and Latino Caucus, Senator makes a great point as far as, one glove doesn't fit all across our communities, cities and towns. There has been some debate on, portions of the language because we have working families. Some municipalities have a higher percentage of single parent households, communication gaps with children, scheduling rides after home, things like that, and having cell phones on their person. So those deliberations and conversations will continue to happen. Like our senator said, we haven't taken it up in the House, but hopefully this session, by the end of this session.
I can speak on this too. I actually filed a bill to ban cell phones, H715. It's been combined with, I think, 7 or 11 other House members filed a similar bill. So it is sitting, waiting for us to debate it. This is something that I actually was, my previous time was as a teacher and a principal. And one of the last things at Holbrook Middle High School I implemented was a bell-to-bell ban using the Yonder pouch. And I can just tell you from anecdotal experience, personal experience, that I thought it was very effective. The teachers enjoyed it. The students, I felt like it made them more social. Discipline problems went down. These were all things that I experienced. I saw it at my school, and I saw it, there was a 6 through 12, and I also modeled it after Brockton. And speaking with their administrative team, I think they cited as one of the main reasons their school had a massive turnaround, despite a change in administration, et cetera. That policy in particular was labeled as something that really turned that school district around. So that's something I'm advocating for. If it does get to the floor, and I suspect it will before the upcoming school year, one of the big things freshmen rep do is give their maiden speech. That would probably be mine in a weird twist of tying the legislature to my former life as an educator. So, it's something I'm strongly for, just because I've seen some of the benefits from it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to some of our budget challenges. So another major issue for our district and many across the state is the structural pressure created by Prop 2.5. The limits on an annual property tax growth often don't keep pace with inflation or rising costs in areas like special education, transportation, and staffing. As a result, we've seen more and more communities turning to override votes just to maintain services. From your perspective at the State House, how are you seeing this play out across Massachusetts, and are there any conversations underway about potential adjustments to Prop 2.5, such as a multi-year override or phased approaches?
Medfield's not alone in struggling with the limitations of Prop 2.5. It is, in fact, evident even in its title that this is something that the people voted in, and so the people voted it in. So here we are with what the people wanted. We did do a little bit of digging to see. I did not find, so I am at the moment at least unaware of any proposals on Beacon Hill to change Prop 2.5. I don't foresee it changing anytime soon. But that doesn't negate the very real fiscal challenges that Medfield and pretty much every other town in my district is facing. This idea, though, that sort of came in your question about multi-year overrides or phased increases, or these kinds of ideas are interesting ideas. I hadn't heard them before I was preparing for tonight, so that's interesting, and we can try to sort of investigate them from here. But Prop 2.5, I don't think is going away.
I don't think so either.
Right, but I think, creative, tools around it that would allow the towns to not be in this sort of narrow space on what they have to do to be able to get there, right? Or even just allowing, the multi-year option is interesting, or the phasing is interesting, so that you're not going every year to the same people and saying we need more money again, right?
I do think that, I know you had it in the prepared questions, or the questions that you were able to share in advance in a separate question, but Prop 2.5 is sort of a broader, an aspect of a much broader conversation about municipal revenue, right? Where does municipal revenue come from? How might Beacon Hill at the state level better empower municipalities to raise revenue as they see fit and as is appropriate for each municipality, right? We each represent districts. Each of those districts is different. Each town within each of our districts is different. So the governor filed legislation again this session entitled the Municipal Empowerment Act that does have some revenue components in it. I think we're going to get there later in the conversation, but I raise it now, especially as the chair of the committee that received and reviewed the bulk of that bill. There are lots of different facets of municipal budgeting, including but not limited to revenue. So if this piece doesn't shift, maybe there's movement somewhere else. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. But I think it's important to raise at this point in our conversation that Prop 2.5 doesn't stand by itself.
That's fair. Okay.
One additional thing on that, too.
Yeah.
I think in this fiscal environment as well, where affordability is front and center on just about every voter's mind, I would say in other years it might have a better chance. So this year it's particularly tough. I mean, just about everywhere that we go, affordability is front and center. And I think, one of the things that's popular about Prop 2.5 is that it does, control property tax rates and how much can be put on property owners, and then I think it causes all sorts of problems at places like this at the municipal level, who then has to constantly go back and ask for overrides, especially when schools are in play. Needham's going to have to do it for the Pollard School. The Dale School's on the horizon too, and I think it's just a difficult situation when money's low pretty much everywhere right now.
Yeah. So building on that then, healthcare costs were a major driver of some of the budget pressures we felt this year. Are there legislative proposals being considered that would give communities more flexibility to address rising costs like healthcare, special education, or capital needs? For example, tools that might help address expenses with healthcare, special education, or capital needs that are increasing faster than inflation?
I actually filed legislation to create a special commission to investigate specifically better ways for us to address special education costs. We know that is one of the massive, massive drivers of budgeting woes in multiple municipalities all throughout the state. It's not even just the amounts of money, it's also how the money moves. With students who receive special education and who need special education, and that's a complex problem, and so anyway, that's why I filed the bill. That is part of what I think of as a broader conversation about the entirety of the Chapter 70 formula. I think there are some of us who are particularly focused on the special education costs, and I think a broader sector of lawmakers who are, of our colleagues, who are focused on, maybe not broad. There's another group of people who are, I shouldn't judge by the, I don't know the quantities, but people who are really thinking about all of the way we do Chapter 70 funding entirely. And legislation has been filed to both pieces, right? There's the wholesale, take another look at Chapter 70. When we voted, I can't believe this, I'm the only one at this table who actually voted on the Student Opportunity Act, but I remember that vote. It's my first term, and part of that conversation at that time was that the education funding formula should be revisited every decade, and it has been. I've been in office 8 years, so it's been about a decade, right? So it's arguably time to go back and look at that again. Personally, what I am hearing from my districts and from you and from your colleagues in other towns is that special education is the most significant piece, with healthcare costs as a close second. And so I actually filed legislation on both pieces, right? The special education costs specifically. The healthcare costs are not unique to schools, right? That's ubiquitous across the board for everybody. It's crazy expensive. And I actually was successful last session in passing portions of legislation that's crafted in collaboration with the Health Policy Commission and the Center for Health Information Analysis, that are sort of wholesale healthcare cost reduction measures. Some pieces got over the finish line, some pieces didn't, so we've refiled the pieces that didn't, and those are still in play now. So that is a long way of saying yes.
I would say that we really appreciate the work you've done on circuit breaker, all three of you. I mean, that's really important for districts. That's an area that impacts every school district. So Chapter 70 reform may not impact everyone, but circuit breaker certainly does, and the addition of transportation has been very helpful, so we appreciate your work on that.
Agreed.
I will say, I know we were at the Tri-County meeting the other day, and Rep. Arena DeRosa, who I serve with in Millis, brought up one of his bills that he filed, which is H505, an act providing state support for municipal private special education costs. So his bill would actually limit how much tuition can increase each year. He set a cap at about 2.5% in 1 year. So this also would require earlier notice of price increases from special education programs or these private institutions, to communicate those increases by March 1st of each year. And if that does not happen, the new price can't take effect until the following July 1st, the next fiscal year. So that's just one bill that we currently have in the House. I think Rep. Tarski has a bill as well.
I don't have a bill, but I was at the Tri-County with the superintendent and other superintendents, and I remember this from my own experiences. The circuit breaker funds and those costs were really a constant threat. And they often led to just discussions on whether we should send students out of district or not. Like, those conversations were very real, even when we thought the best interest of the student was to send them somewhere out of district. Because, sometimes the cost can be upwards of $500,000 a year, like really exorbitant amounts of money. And I think two things need to happen with the circuit breaker. One is the threshold that triggers state intervention has to come down. I think that would help school districts. And then I also think that the amount that's recouped for school districts, instead of the 75%, this is something the superintendent's talked about, it should rise up to around 90%, if not fully reimbursed. I think the question is how the state would afford that, but I think that would really benefit some of your budgets, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed, yeah.
And the transportation as well. And there was a bill that you guys brought up at the Tri-County meeting that did try to lift it from 75 to 90. And That would be one I'd be interested in signing in on and trying to push.
The year for that, so.
Yeah, there was that. But it is a good bill, and I think that's money well spent. I mean, that would take a lot of pressure off, groups like this.
So, and as we're talking about percentages for the public, they know $500,000 in our budget is equal to 1%. So when we're talking about 3 or 4% in Dr. Marsden's budget, we're talking $1 million for reimbursement on sped costs. That's 2% of that. So just so that people can understand what those numbers actually mean to the school district.
And I believe we have currently one student in district that is about $500,600,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
So.
And I'll add that actually in previous state budget debates, at least on the Senate side, I can't speak to the House, we have voted. I have personally taken more than one vote to raise that reimbursement rate up to 90%, and it hasn't gotten over the finish line yet.
Well, we appreciate the 75, and I know that the addition of transportation has been a huge help, because that, as Becca said, we have health care, and a close third is transportation costs. The increases that we have in transportation, that districts have in transportation, is just a lot. So we appreciate that.
So then you mentioned earlier, and this was one of the questions, the Municipal Empowerment Act. So would you be able to share any updates like the Municipal Empowerment Act or that one in particular that would help local revenue options and practical tools that might be available to communities like Medfield, and what's the timeline or likelihood for progress?
Sure, I'll take that one. So the Municipal Empowerment Act is a piece of legislation, a pretty robust piece of legislation filed by the governor and the lieutenant governor, Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll. They first filed it last session. It did not make it over the finish line. They refiled it in January of this year. They filed it as a House, sorry, it's 2026. They refiled it in January of last year. This term for us in the legislature. They filed that bill in the House, and then the bill proceeded to sit in the House Clerk's office for 7 months. So the bill was not assigned to committees of jurisdiction until the very end of July 31st. By the time all the paperwork floats around and everything, it's August by the time we actually got it. The House Clerk decided to split up the bill into 3 different parts. The bulk of the bill, the overwhelming majority of the bill, came to the committee I chair, Municipalities and Regional Government. A smaller subset, a notably smaller subset, went to the Joint Committee on Revenue, on which I sit as a member but do not have a position of leadership, and a couple of sections went to the Joint Committee on Public Service. So now we have 3 committees that have jurisdiction over the bill in various different parts. The Joint Committee on Municipalities, we held the hearing on that I personally chaired at the end of October 28th. We need time, once we get the bill, to sort of take a look at it, review, prepare for the hearing, make sure we can coordinate with the people who need to testify. That happened on October 28th, and through collaboration with my House co-chair, we worked through the provisions that we had, which were, again, the notable majority of the bill. We redrafted a number of pieces of it, and we have reported out successfully that bill that came out. Right, Rep. Tarski is a member of the committee. We voted that out in the middle of last month in February. So I'm happy to run through the specifics of what we already reported out. There was a hearing. I don't recall the specifics about the pieces in public service. I believe they have already had their hearing on the couple of sections that they had. Revenue for sure had the hearing because I was at it, because I'm on that committee. And as far as I understand, there is not yet agreement between the chairs of those respective other committees as to the provisions of those bills. So all of the revenue pieces, that went to revenue, and the couple of pieces that went to public service are still in committee. The pieces that we reported out from the Municipalities and Regional Government Committee include a number of things. It's a hefty bill. I will try to not put you to sleep, but some of the top lines include an increased bond term for school projects from 30 to 40 years. Increasing the flexibility for post-retirement employment, making permanent the public meeting flexibility, so hybrid public meetings, which are actually provisions that I wrote in the middle of COVID, which was the last time I chaired this committee. It's a different experience this time because we're actually able to be in person. And not particularly relevant for all of you on the school committee, but certainly for your friends at DPW and on the select board, everybody's favorite issue, double polls, which I'm sure you don't want to hear anything about. It's fascinating, actually. But all of those revenue components are still stuck in committee. The pieces that municipalities reported out are now back with the House. Right, because the bill was filed in the House clerk did its thing, and then each of the committees got our pieces. We have reviewed them and successfully reported them out. We're the only committee to have done so. They are back with the House and have to move through the floor of the House successfully before the Senate will have a chance to review it, and that's where the bill is. I got lots of information about that bill if you want to drill down any further.
So still some time then until we see anything be helpful for us.
That is a fair assessment, yes.
Okay.
And with the pace that we move, not so sure.
Sounds like a lot of time.
I will say, on my committees, the committees that I lead, we are moving very fast. We have successfully reported out. I have had gubernatorially filed bills in both of the committees I chair. Both of them have been reported out already, and are on the move. As far as to the extent that I had a hand in making sure that was moving, those have moved successfully and rather quickly, given the size of those bills.
Okay. All right. So Medfield has been invited back into the Massachusetts School Building Authority program for the Dale Street School project. The existing Dale Street School is far beyond its useful life and in clear need of replacement. As we move forward in the MSBA process and prepare for a future debt exclusion vote, how might you use your platform to support this project, whether through advocacy, coordination with state partners, or public engagement, to help build confidence and ensure the required town votes are successful?
Do a lot of talking. Either of you gentlemen want to take that one?
So as I said earlier, Needham's going through a Pollard Middle School MSBA process. It was clocked in I think 3:20, and then basically I sent the MSBA a letter of support, reached out to their school committee, and I spoke during the latest hearing, which it's now gotten approval to go to the next phase, and ultimately it's got to go to Needham Town Meeting and get the override to pass. But I would be happy to play a similar role with Medfield. I think that, for voters, whether they approve the Dale School rebuild or not, I don't think you want to turn away the state's contribution to that overall cost. Right, and I think that's where we can bring value, is to help secure some of that state money, that if you do decide to go ahead with this project, it's there for you. So I'd be happy to, all of us would write you a letter and then talk to these folks to help advance it, should this be the way that it looks like it's going with the Dale School. Yep.
So likewise, I think across the district that I serve, I think everyone has a new school build. So we've just built a new middle school in Walpole. We have a new annex going up in Walpole at the high school. I've been, engaged in conversations for Roderick School in Rentham, Millis, their combined middle school and high school build. So we would definitely be willing to provide those letters of support and insight, as far as community outreach. Because we only know in this economic, climate that we sit in today, the escalating cost of materials and labor continues to go up. I know in Norfolk, which Jeff can probably speak to, I'm sure he's been a part of those meetings with Freeman Kennedy, from Freeman Kennedy originally being built versus what it would cost today just for, an addition to the school. It's the gap is pretty significant as far as labor and material costs. So, the more we kick this down the road, it's only going to hurt Medfield's constituents even further.
Yes, just if we can make an ask at the same time, is just keep us in the loop. Let us know how things are going, and just keep us apprised of where you are in the process so that we can be ready to go when you're ready to go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. So finally, we'd like to give you a chance to highlight any updates or insights that you believe would be important for Medfield residents to hear, particularly around the state's fiscal outlook and what towns and schools should be preparing for in the next 1 to 3 years.
Yeah, so we talked about a little of this earlier this week, the fiscal outlook. Obviously, with, our federal partners, we are consistently meeting with them and trying to get a, pulse on exactly what's happening funding-wise because, it is, there are funding gaps that Massachusetts has, which, when we're trying to level out our budget, for the end of the year and as we head into, next fiscal year, it's very difficult to be able to plan things ahead, given the uncertainty that we have right now with our federal government. So those conversations continue to happen. I know all three of us meet with our congressman pretty regularly in our federal delegation. So we'll continue to keep you all updated as those, as that insight comes to us.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, this is a constant concern at the state level. I think we're all wondering what rising healthcare costs mean. All the towns that I represent are talking anywhere from 12 to 18% increases in that alone, and that has ramifications even on schools with being able to, what does that do to the budget? Does that mean teachers have to be let go to afford some of those costs? Like, those are very real conversations. I can tell you this, personally, I will push for as many school dollars as I can. And whether that's also trying to get the circuit breaker to what I think it needs to be at, looking at Chapter 70 funding and minimal aid districts, and whether that's the right way to do some of the funding schemes, which doesn't always benefit schools like Medfield or districts like Medfield. I think those are conversations worth having. Personally, I don't think there's any better money spent than on schools. So I think we're just, as the belt tightens, we should still prioritize schools as one of, if not the most important expense that we have. So that's where I stand, and I'll keep advocating along those lines.
I appreciate the comment because I think one of the things, and just full disclosure, I wear the business administrator in Dayton-Rehoboth Regional. So, and thank you for that time, Representative Vaughn, last year at the Hill. So I haven't forgotten. I will tell people about that later. However, one of the struggles with the difference between regional and a town budget is the Chapter 70 funding is always that timing, right? And obviously we wait for revenues to come in, so the final budget doesn't come in until the end of June, maybe July, whenever that happens, and our budgets are set and done. And so I won't call it damage, but decisions have been made in our budget that we're deciding on now. And so using other vehicles to fund education, like circuit breaker, like transportation, and those others, I would implore to be first because, we could wait a very long time before the cherry sheet looks any different for places like Medfield, and having benefits to directly impact our expenses, like special education, like transportation, and other areas such as that. Or curriculum that are dedicated dollars for dedicated things that we need in schools is a much better impact for us as we balance out the other things with the town expenses, like healthcare and others. And that's my 2 cents on that.
So let me actually piggyback on that and what my colleagues have shared as well, that to say that even with the, let's say, shaky fiscal outlook, given the significant uncertainty and cruelty of the Trump administration. To Rep. Vaughn's point, I was talking with Congressman Auchincloss this morning, actually. And so we do speak with our partners regularly. We do the best we can at the state level, as do all of you at the local level, with the resources we have. And even in these fiscally challenging times, Medfield's funding has gone up every single year. every single year from the state, right? Going back, I have the numbers just for the last couple of fiscal years and the governor's proposal for this year, but the Chapter 70 money for Medfield and also for Tri-County has increased every single fiscal year. And the unrestricted government aid has also gone up every single fiscal year. And that actually was a point of distinction between the House and Senate budget debates within each chamber. We ended up with the Senate proposal, which made sure that UGA, the unrestricted government aid, went up more than went up, period, actually. So I'm happy to run through those figures if anybody wants them or we want to enter them onto the record. But the governors, we're now at the phase where the governor of the budgeting process, where the governor has released her proposed budget for fiscal 27. The House is going to go first. They'll debate the budget next month in April. The Senate won't debate the budget until they're done. It's a money bill. House has to go first. So we get it in May. And as Leo just, rightly pointed out, we wrap up that budget reconciliation process. Excuse me, not actually the budgeting reconciliation, but the negotiating of the language of the budget. Hopefully in June, so that we have an on-time budget. We did have an on-time state budget last year, which was great. I personally was extremely happy to see that. I will also add that Medfield and every other community in my district, at least, has benefited from the fair share dollars. Right, the voters voted to implement the Fair Share Amendment a few years back. Those revenues have been coming in above expectations consistently year over year. And so we in the state have been fiscally responsible in how much of that money we allocate within the state budget. And then as we see the revenues come in, because we have been fiscally responsible and conservative in the initial budgeting process, we have had surplus dollars for specifically within the fair share revenues that must go to education or transportation. And they do go to education and transportation every single time. So Medfield and many other communities get a boost when those surpluses are actually known and can be allocated accordingly. And that, at least in my office with my team, we make sure every time we have that kind of opportunity, we immediately get in touch with usually the town executive, right? So the town administrator or the town manager to say, where do you need this, right? What can we do? And we work in collaboration with them and often the select board. In addition, just by way of updates, I wanted to just give some other updates since this is the time for us to give some updates. Medfield's a wonderful town, and we all have been at many, many, many wonderful things, both here in Medfield and with Medfield students on the Hill. So just for this academic year, there was Discovered Medfield Day. In October of 25, I visited both the Dale School and the Wheelock School, and I've met with, I think, like 400 Medfield elementary age students. And then just last month, I was able to convene a meeting with our delegation, with the town leadership, and also with the Healy Driscoll administration with specific regard to the Medfield State Hospital project and housing and Belforge that resulted in a huge state monetary investment in this town, more than $10 million total to help this town with its various ongoing projects and needs.
Second round of funding.
That what?
Second round of funding.
Yeah, it's really significant. That same month, I was at the high school. You guys saw Jeff on the outside of that, and we heard about puppies and other exciting things. So that was great. But spoke with 150 AP students, specifically about their civics education project, which for me is not only something that I love, but also something that I lead on in the budget process every single year since my former colleague, Senator Chandler, retired, and I've been able to increase the amount of money that we put into the Civics Education Trust Fund every single cycle. So last year we were at $2.5 million, and in fact, in the governor's budget proposal for fiscal 27, she already started us at $2.5 million, which is great. And then just February was last month, right? Because it's March now. We, all three of us, hosted the girls' soccer team, right? The state champs in the State House. We got some, really fun day with everybody coming into both chambers, introduced on the floors of both chambers, pictures on the balcony, with the Boston Common in the back. I can't speak for my colleagues on this one, but personally, in just 2026, I've already connected with more than 600 students throughout the district. And that's not the academic year, that's literally just since January. So lots of engagement with our youth. And I thank you for nodding and smiling to our youth school committee member. But that's a huge part, I think, of our responsibility as state lawmakers and reps and senators is to provide civics education in real time, in real action, and that's by interacting, in part by interacting with all of us. We talked earlier about the cell phone legislation. The Senate and the House have passed early literacy reform already. The House and the Senate also have passed the BRIGHT Act. That's the higher education bond. It's a $3 billion with a B dollar bond bill that I believe they are negotiating out some of the differences now, so we can, it's getting closer to the governor's desk. And I think we talked a little bit about education already. So I, just by way of providing some additional bits for all of you.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Do you guys have anything else? No. All right, then on behalf of the school committee, I just want to thank you guys for being here tonight and engaging with us on these topics. We really appreciate your support for Medfield and all the work that you guys do, and being here to help our community navigate some of these challenges that we're facing. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation and for your leadership and partnership.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody. You too.
All right, so moving on, we have up next the K-5 Literacy Program Town Meeting Warrant Article. Dr. Marsden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we had spoken with Steve Callahan, the chair of the Warrant Committee, right after our public hearing in January. And during that public hearing, we had the 3.99 at that point, and we talked about the K-5 literacy program not being a part of the budget. So Steve pulled us aside afterwards and said, there might be another mechanism for us to get that if it's not in the operating budget. So he and Christine Trewiler did some research on that. They were thinking capital might work, but what it came down to, it was because it's a one-time use, it made a lot of sense for a standalone article to use free cash to pay for that. So I think that's what the town's going to write up that article, so we'll have it at the next meeting in March. But I want to just kind of bring it to you that it would be, if you approve it, it would be an article that is supported and brought forward by the school committee at town meeting.
What was the total on that again?
221,000. So we thought it was they felt that it fit into the financial policy, which talks about one-time use out of free cash, and this would do it. So we just appreciate your creativity in looking at such an important thing that we really need for our district going forward, not fitting into the operating budget given the 1.8 and giving our constraints around that, but thinking of a different way to get that for our students and for our teachers. So we're happy about that. Like I said, we'll bring it at the next meeting, but hopefully you will support that and endorse that article for the annual town meeting in May.
How do they feel about it being adopted? Because if it's not supported on the floor at the town meeting, and then we're kind of back to square one in that sense.
Yeah, I think if that's the case, we would try to look at doing a multi-year adoption, which isn't what obviously the teachers want. Not best for kids at this point based on the training the teachers have had. We'd have to look at doing something where we'd start at maybe K1 or something and then build it up that way. It wouldn't be a great implementation for sure. So we're hoping that it's going to go through there. But we'll bring it forward. I'm sorry, we'll bring it forward to the next meeting.
Any other questions on that? So that will be likely on our next agenda for our next meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll vote, yeah. No questions. So that's a great idea, and I appreciate Steve and his team finding an outside the box way. It's still just isn't a solution to something I think from, anecdotally, the kids are excited about, the teachers were very excited about it in front of us. So, just nervous about it, as I'm nervous about many votes many of the things that'll be happening. But yeah, thanks to Steve and the crew for finding another way to, find a huge amount of money for something that's super important for our kids.
Well, and I think it's, it kind of begs the question of that use of that free cash conversation that I think there's been a lot of conversation about that particular item. I guess, kind of my question will be, and will continue to be, around projection of, with Diana's comment at the hearing around the Dale Street ask that's not far off, that the amount of money we asked for an override for this time, that gets added to, our budget year over year. So it's not just like a one-time ask, it's a year over year, is going to be sustainable in our growth, or our inflation within our district over the coming years, so that we're not asking for more at the same time. Oh, by the way, we also want, a $100 million elementary school. So, and I think that's just continues to be my concern, where, yes, I think that's true as a one-time use, but would that 225 be better spent for K-5 literacy program this year, offsetting CBA increases next year, because, under the CBA, we know there's going to be an increase in the collective bargaining agreement. And so that we'll have to deal with and plan out over time. So those are just my only concerns about, from a larger perspective, projecting out and keeping Dale Street in mind and so on. Yep.
Okay. So we're supposed to have a meeting next Thursday, but one of the things that the three of us talked about at the agenda meeting was we might not have a lot for next week, and we might have a lot more later in March. So given just kind of how the calendar looked, we wanted to see the possibility of moving next week's meeting to March 22nd. March 6th. Thank you. Yes, March 26th. So if that works for people, then we would like to move our March 12th meeting to March 26th. Does that work?
That's fine.
Yep.
Leo?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's moved then. All right, any other items since posting on March 3rd?
I don't have any, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving on to old business, FY27 budget update. Dr. Marsden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you said earlier, we did our presentation to the Warrant Committee on Monday night, and that was a rescheduled meeting due to the snowstorms that we had the previous week. We went through a kind of a truncated version of an updated version of our public hearing presentation with some additions in there. I guess the addition I would like to share was our conversation around what the 1.8 does to class sizes, especially at the elementary level. And I think that we talked at last meeting that we would put together some of the numbers for elementary, and as we said at the last meeting as well, that it's much more difficult, 6 through 12, to project what those would be based on course offerings. And I think our concern would be reducing the amount of course offerings and electives that our students would have grades 6 through 12, and then reducing the cluster model at the middle school and what impact that would have. So I think it's a little less straightforward in terms of 6 through 12, but elementary, because you voted at the last meeting to increase the tuitions for both preschool and full-day kindergarten, the numbers and class size are a lot, are pretty stable at 22 students at full-day kindergarten. And remember, there isn't a full-time assistant in there all the time, so it is 2 adults in there at all times. And then grade 1 would be 20 students. So those aren't really far off from what we normally have within district. However, when you start to get to Wheelock and Dale, we start to see an increase in students, and this is removing, with a 1.8, removing 1 classroom teacher per grade level. So at grade 2, it goes to 24 to 25 students per classroom. Grade 3, 25, 26 students per classroom. Grade 4, 23, 24 students per classroom. In grade 5, 25, 26 students per classroom. And that's based on existing numbers that we have today. It doesn't count in any move-ins over the summer or move-outs, frankly. So, I think we typically gain students, a few students over the summer. So we're waiting to see what that impact would be. And then at 6 through 12, it's more looking at it varies by course and department. We would see a range, we think, from the low 20s to the high 20s. And right now, there are definitely many classes in the teens in both the middle school and high school, so that would increase those as well. We'd look at potential loss of AP classes, loss of electives. I think I gave the example Monday night is if we had to reduce our budget a couple of years ago and reduce a full-time wellness teacher through attrition who took a different position. She moved, so we didn't replace that position, and that was a whole host of loss of electives for our high school students. So every time a teacher goes away, especially in the secondary level, you're going to feel a loss of opportunities for kids. And I think that's what we're looking at. And then we talked about potential study periods, which I think was something that happened many years ago in Medfield. And it's different, Flex is students getting help, students going into different areas. This is a situation where students would just be either in a cafeteria or in a classroom and just an old-fashioned study period, which we don't want to go back to ever. So I think that would be really going backwards with our education. So definitely the 1.8 has a lot of impact on us, and that 1.8 again is if the override doesn't pass, then we'd be stuck with a 1.8% increase going forward. And that's all the reductions we talked about at the last meeting are all embedded in that 1.8, and we discussed those again on Monday night. So that's really the update that we had. It's not much difference from on Monday night, and we're still looking at the reduction in force. Where are some of the areas the law is telling us it tells us it has to, in the contract, tells us it has to be that non-professional teacher status first, and we go through that, and then there's the law that changed a few years ago that allows us to look at performance and what's best for students, et cetera. So we have a lot of non-professional teacher status as it is right now, so we'll have to go through that list. So a lot of work ahead, and a lot of anguish for folks ahead as well. So that's where we are.
Is there any, I know that's just, some people really like numbers, and I completely understand that high school is impossible to predict that, genuinely. Yes. Is there any way to kind of get a sense of as of right now, as this year there's this many electives in the high school, we would go down to just this many. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
I get you can't.
Sure, we could do that.
But that might be helpful when we're just trying to talk about it.
As we get closer to, I think from what the town has mentioned is that we'll know by the end of this month or the beginning of next month what the override amount will be, and we'll get a clear sense of that and what that looks like. Then we are going to start to really put names and faces with these reductions, because right now the list that we talked about, it could change, but we still have to get to that 1.2 million number. And how we get there is the process that we're going through the next six weeks or so, 4 to 5, 6 weeks. So that's what we're doing. So we can absolutely do that, and that once we have a better sense of what those reductions look like. And I said Monday night too, our goal is to do as much of this by attrition as we can, but there's some we just can't. So there's some retirements that we're waiting on that may or may not happen, and some of those positions are ones we have to refill. There are special education, key special education positions that have to be rehired. We can't just not rehire that person, it just won't work. So that's what we're kind of working through now, and we'll have a much better sense in April, what that looks like, and then we can really hone in on what those electives might be. I think at the parent advisory yesterday morning, one of the responses that a parent gave me was that it would be really important to take a look at if this, then that, if this, then that, and really get that out to families. And I think that's what we're going to try to work on is try to get that out there. And I think that was a really good suggestion of that makes it real for people that if this doesn't happen, then that happens, and trying to get that word out. So we're just kind of waiting now to see what the override will be, and, what we'll go from there. But any other suggestions that you have, I'd happy to work on those. And
when do you have to tell teachers by their contract?
June 15th. But
is that late?
Yeah, but
okay.
what I met with the association this week, last week actually, and we talked about it. And my goal is to sit down with everyone by April vacation and let people know. I think it's just fair. One of the things that I talked to warrant committee members about is that the complexity of this is you give pink slips to all non-professional teacher staff, right? So you pink slip everybody, right? So if I'm a teacher in that situation, I'm looking for another job.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Right.
Because they're
So,
posted.
Of course.
We could be in a
right.
situation where we're losing really good people.
Right.
That take, because we did it to other districts last couple of
you
years.
don't
We
get
did, we
there.
took Westwood teachers and we took Franklin teachers. So, I mean, I think that's something that is a problem for us, and we're trying to, get the sweet spot on the timing. But we feel that it's only right for people to know these things, at least April vacation, so that gives them enough time to, to
Get a
look
job.
for another position.
Yeah, of course.
That kind of thing.
It's just so, like, when we were talking about timing earlier with those guys, but yeah, it's just like, it's so unfortunate how this whole, so they'll come out with their number, you tell some teachers, and then we vote, and it's just so funny how this whole thing,
Well, I mean,
not funny, that is not the right word.
Timing does it.
The whole timing's so messed
Yeah.
up, we're so whatever the warrant committee comes out with the budget, we bring it, whatever happens on the floor happens on the floor. It's just, whatever.
Yeah, I
But
think
know
the
there's nothing. I didn't know when the date was in the contract when you have to tell the teachers.
So
but
the big
April break
concern that I
makes
have
sense.
going forward too is if we have town meeting on May 4th, if we do have a ballot vote on June 8th.
Right.
That's a long time.
Yeah, of course.
That's a long time.
Everyone's got a job by then.
So I think that's, talking with Christine today, we're looking at some things, and I think that's something that the select board has to make a decision on and see what that looks like. But I think that's challenging for us.
Yeah.
When we're looking at a reduction in force to drag it on that long is not great, so.
No.
No, it's
Yeah,
hard
it's
to
crazy,
have
right?
energy I mean, I know that they will, because I think we have great teachers, but it is hard when someone doesn't think they're gonna have a job, but they're expected to show up for
Correct.
2 months and have a positive attitude.
Right. I mean, even right now, they're this
Yeah,
all
even-
affects their
yeah,
attitude. Let's be
even-
very
even now, yes, I mean,
Even right now.
I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because I think
No.
they're great, right?
I agree,
and I know
but-
they show up. And
I heard there was quite a mass of people at the warrant committee meeting.
There was.
There was.
Yeah.
There was 50 at least because I counted. There was no seats, and it was at 110 degrees.
I was gonna say,
I thought I was gonna pass
I
out.
don't think that room seats 20, so.
No.
Yeah, thanks.
So that's what we're.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to mobile phone social media task force update.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Will.
Oh, I was just gonna say we rescheduled the meeting. We were supposed to have one. Wait, this week, right? Yeah,
week,
yeah.
yes.
We rescheduled it. But stuff going on with that. The waiting until 8th is still alive. There's going to be a meeting on March 30th in the library at 7 p.m. and it is for people. The email distribution will be for people who are currently on wait till 8th, but just to plug that, if you're interested, concerned, having challenges with your child and the conversations, if you want to be a part of that conversation, March 30th, 7 p.m., high school library, there will be a meeting. And do you know when the Screenagers date is, the next one?
We were gonna do that yesterday.
Okay, I
so
didn't know if we had the
so
date.
April
but
will have to.
Okay.
Actually, you know what, Will? I think I do.
I think a date exists, but
I think we do.
the task force, our next.
It's April 30th.
Okay. Our next order of business will trying to keep that conversation going the best way possible. So what the task force next job, which we will do at our next meeting, is just what would be the it was. Have we a meeting? Do we update? I mean, but it was 50 people
mentioned it. There were a lot. It was
so a lot of
packed.
people showed up
It
to
was
that.
packed.
I think as a committee, it's fair to say maybe watching a video for 50 minutes isn't the best. So the task force, we have the date if it's April 30th, but we're going to try to figure out what the best use of that date is. So if you came last time, come again, bring a friend, and the task force is going to do their best to figure out what people want, how the community wants that conversation to push forward. So.
That's fair.
And I think it's good, and I feel like I got an email, but maybe I saw it somewhere else, for the wait till 8th. Obviously, that ship has sailed, right, for me.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean I don't care.
Sorry,
No,
for her-
doesn't
for her
mean I don't
personally.
care about, and
Sure.
some people may have not been willing to sign up yet, but still may want to come to that,
Yeah.
thinking about it. So I think the more ways that, you might not be on that email list because you haven't actually signed up, but you
Right.
are interested and
Yeah.
may come. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
what
do
if you didn't wait till 8th? Is there a separate path that
You get
says?
kicked out,
Yeah, I was
you're
gonna say,
bad
do you get
person.
You're not allowed.
Come to all of it. Sorry, I appreciate if that is not what I'm trying to say. It's just I just keep ringing the
Actually,
bell.
what I'm saying
but-
is there a strategy for
You're gonna take your kids
hardcore
up
management through 8th, whatever the case may be.
But if you're interested in these conversations, March 30th and April 30th, you think it is, Dr. Marsden?
Yeah, I do think it's
But
April
so
30th.
easy to remember, March 30th, April 30th.
Is April 30th a Friday?
No, it's a Thursday.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
Thursday,
it
okay.
then.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
definitely the night then.
Yeah, so those are dates. Block, get a babysitter if you want to come talk about the struggles with screen time.
And then you can go to town meeting on Monday night.
Yep.
You know, be a busy week.
Stay
Yep.
busy, yeah.
Lots going on.
She really should call it wait till the Washington trip, other than the 8th. Because the Washington trip is when everyone gets phones.
Oh, no, wait, after, well, whatever. Delay.
Delay.
The more you delay,
The better.
better.
The better.
That's what the science tells me.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. School building committee update. Dr. Marsden?
Sure. We had our OPM subcommittee yesterday, last night, and the subcommittee interviewed 3 different firms, and they are now putting together their scores. And I think Leo, is there a meeting? Is there a meeting Monday, Michael? Monday night?
There is a meeting Monday during the day, a subcommittee meeting,
Subcommittee meeting?
an executive session to review and, what's that? It's a Zoom meeting, yeah.
Okay.
But,
So I know that's
just to
that's
finalize.
coming up, and they're going to finalize that, and then, make a decision on which OPM to go with, but
I'll put forward, I gotta remember.
forward, right.
Because
Put
MSBA
forward to
does get the
MSBA.
final decision.
Right.
Well, there's a vote of 20 people, of which we're 4. So, something like that, right? Yeah.
And then we have our regular meeting coming up in April as well.
Right. The first Wednesday.
First Wednesday of every month.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Communication and community engagement. Any PTO type org updates?
There are open positions at the schools if anyone wants to volunteer.
Schools need people still. All of
I
them,
mean,
or do
I mean,
you-
everyone needs someone.
Well, sometimes,
Yeah, no, I have to
sometimes if
look.
it's your first year, you like.
Yeah, I do have to look. I know Wheelock does. I know Dale does.
You want to volunteer, there's stuff to
Yeah,
do.
I mean, I'm sure that, I think Kristen's done it, Blake.
It would be helpful to link that. My newsletter's going out tomorrow. It'd be helpful to link that
Oh,
again.
yeah, we can add that
I
in.
can link the one that I sent out before.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I'm sure
Maybe it's
that,
different then.
I can text and find out if it's different
Okay.
and let you know
All
if
right, thank
anyone,
you.
but, yeah, that would be great.
And there was, so I do recognize we don't always comment on public comment. So the superintendent parent guardian advisory is for parent and guardians. And I would just like to say, I think your request is actually for something different because you're looking for the superintendent to speak to the entire community. So I would just like to keep those as separate asks. But the superintendent parent guardian advisory did happen yesterday. You were there. Do you guys want to give an update on how it went?
Sure. So we had a really great presentation. At our last one, parents were talking a little bit about the writing process K-12, and they wanted a little bit more information on how that works. So we had our K-5 literacy specialist and our 6 through 12 department chair and Christine Power. So Jamie, Beth, and Christine did a wonderful presentation on how the expectations are, what the standards are, and how kids in Medfield go from kindergarten to 12, and what the writing expectations are. It was really, really great. Well done. Really good questions from the parents, and couldn't be more proud of the work that those 3 women did during our presentation. And then I did a quick update on the budget. So it was good. We had a good meeting.
I think I was there obviously as a parent, so I can be there because I have a child in the schools. But I do think the literacy program is so important because I think we have I think now with foundations and adding this, I think we're just making our ELA program so much stronger than it has been historically with some of these new things. I think it's so important. And with the bill for like the right to read and all of that, I think we're finally sort of catching up to where we
good
need
spot.
to be. So I thought it was great to hear sort of the work that's gone into that by the ELA team and what they've done.
A lot of conversation around the vertical team that we've done
Right.
For ELA, and then touched a little bit about the math that's going on right now, too. We have ELA math at the vertical team. So the vertical team is really having teachers from each grade level representative all in the same room and talking about math. So math and language arts, so you know what's happening in 2 grades below you and 2 grades above you. Everyone knows exactly what's going on, and just really good communication and conversation with teachers. So.
And if we ever did want to write, I don't know the history, I don't know when it used to be open, but I do feel strongly that I don't like having public meetings during the day when students are, so you'd have to just have a different venue because I
Yeah.
feel like there's a safety issue.
Yeah.
whenever people are coming in and out of school for any reason.
Okay, Hillary, how's it going down there?
Good.
Do you have any updates for us?
Not many. There's not many updates. DECA States is next week, so that's kind of coming up, but not many updates for Student Council. MASC is happening right now, so that's a conference in Cape Cod that a couple of our representatives are at, so, yeah,
That's student council.
Yes.
for Student Council.
I was just saying,
No,
well,
I knew it wasn't
MASC,
school committee, right?
well,
Are
it
they
could be.
polar,
You never know.
polar plunging this year? Yeah, okay.
Every year.
A lot of snow down there to polar plunge.
It sure is.
Warm, so maybe
Maybe not as
I don't know.
bad.
Maybe the polar plunge happened on a warm day.
Yeah, maybe. All right, informational items. Was there any in there?
We had, I think, the enrollment.
Enrollment, okay.
Yeah, the enrollment was
Okay.
in there.
All right, future agenda items, our bus fee discussion will be on March 26th, and then our next meeting will be on March 26th. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
It is Thursday, March